Hello, dear friends of Think BRICS. I'm Lorenzo Maria Pacini, and today I would like to welcome Professor Mohammad Marandi. Thank you so much for being with us. It's not the first time the latest had an interview with Anastasia. This time it's up to me, and it's my first interview here in the channel. Professor Marandi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So we see what is happening in Iran in the latest times, and for 13 days we saw this huge digital propaganda against the country. Everybody was trying to see to change how people are seeing Iran. We have this huge Infowarfare battle, but Professor Mandi, what actually happened inside of Iran? What's the reality behind the Western propaganda?
What we had was a clear conspiracy, and all the information that we need is out there in public. First, we have the US manipulating the Iranian currency through neighboring countries. This is something that the US Secretary of Treasury in Davos gloated about in an interview. And he said, we manipulated the currency, we crashed the currency to bring people on the streets. And we succeeded. So the objective was to target ordinary people and make them suffer. Then we had peaceful demonstrations in Tehran about the currency. They weren't very large, and no one was arrested, no one was harassed. They went on for 2 days. And then on day 3, suddenly we had this influx of very well-trained groups that began to riot and to terrorize. And they were in different cities, and in big cities, they were in different parts of the city, and they were very well coordinated, very well trained, and they were systematically destroying public facilities and attacking public buildings. In the same method in the different cities, they were using the same method. It was obvious that they were trained by the same people. Then on January the 8th and January the 9th, we had these very heavy riots where they were also using guns. And they killed 350 police officers and security officials during those 2 days. It was mostly at night, not during the day, mostly at night. And in all, 3,117 people were killed. These terrorists murdered ordinary people. They burned hundreds of ambulances. They burned many fire engines because they didn't want them to put out the fires. They burned 15 people alive. They cut off people's heads. They were like ISIS. And there's a lot of footage showing their extreme violence. So Western media pretended that these were peaceful protesters, but they weren't. They were rioters that were killing many people. And then we have the admissions by Mossad. Mossad put out a statement in Persian saying that they're on the ground with these rioters. Then Pompeo, twice in a tweet and also more recently on Channel 13 in Israel, said that the CIA is involved and they're aiding the rioters. And then, of course, we have Channel 14 of Israel itself, which is close to Netanyahu, which said that Israel provided the arms, helped bring them into the country to kill hundreds of security officials and police. So the Israeli regime is taking credit for it. The former head of the CIA is taking credit for it. The footage shows that they're extremely violent and murderous. They killed hundreds of police officers, but Western media pretends that these are just peaceful protesters. I think that's a summary of the reality of what happened, and it just shows that Western media is completely controlled. It is controlled by the oligarchs. It is controlled by the Epstein class. And therefore, we're not going to get anything reasonable from the Western media. So the Western media has been mobilized to say tens of thousands of people died, which is nonsense. And a few days ago, the Iranian government put out all the names with all their ID numbers and the means to identify these people, of the 3,117 people, and Western media is silent about that. Why? Because they know that they have no way to discredit this and to provide proof that tens of thousands of people died. What Western media is trying to do is it's trying to create a consensus in the West for war. So from the very beginning, the collapse of the rial, or the 30-40% drop in the rial, the riots, and Western media, all of this is a part of a project to push the United States and Iran, to push the American people towards accepting, and people in the West towards accepting, a war with Iran. That's basically it. And then one final thing. The violence was mostly on the 8th and the 9th. Almost everyone, I mean, the deaths were basically from those two nights. On the 12th of January, millions of people in Tehran came to the streets in defense of the Constitution, against the rioters, and then simultaneously we had demonstrations across the country. So many millions of people in other cities also took to the streets. In Tehran, it is said up to 3 million people participated. RT was there. There was rolling coverage on Iranian media. CCTV was there. CGTN was there. Al Mayadeen was there. Al Jazeera English, Al Jazeera Arabic was there. Other media outlets were there. It's clear as day that in the millions people in Tehran came despite it being a working day. But people were disgusted with what the Western-backed rioters and terrorists were doing. So it's clear that the people stood with the state in support of the Constitution and rejected the rioters. But again, Western media basically repeats what the ruling class wants them to say.
Well, we know that this informational attack came by several sides, United States, Israel, and also other countries coordinator. But in the meantime, we just saw that Iran, China, and Russia signed a new trilateral pact. And this is something that is building up on 25 years of relations between Iran and China, and 20 between Russia and China. Do you think this new alliance will help Iran? Is it Iran ready, or this will be something that will get worse the situation, or maybe this will help the global south to rise together?
In general, the relationship between Iran and Russia, Iran and China, Russia and China have been improving over the past few decades. And after the war in Ukraine, these relationships grew even more rapidly. And after the 12-day war, where the Israeli regime and the Americans conspired to attack Iran and to murder many innocent Iranians, again, the relationship grew stronger between Iran and China, Iran and Russia. So these three countries have a very good relationship today. And they are in coordination with one another with regards to global crises and important issues that we're facing. With regards to economics, they're cooperating. We know about the North-South Transport Corridor, the Belt and Road Initiative. All of these show that the relationship between these countries is multidimensional. But with regards to the military, it's clear that Iran and Russia have been cooperating, whether it's drones or whether it's other means that the Iranians need from the Russians. There is a strong element, very strong element of cooperation, and that is also increasing with China. And I think that really this is the doing of the United States. by antagonizing different countries, by isolating itself. The United States is acting as a catalyst, pushing different countries closer to each other. And I think this is very good for Iran, Russia, and China. It is very good for the international community and for the global majority, the global South. All three countries are members of BRICS. All three countries are members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And all three countries are being targeted by the West and the United States in particular.
And among all these issues, do you think Iran is military ready to effort a battle against its enemies? Because we are hearing a lot about these tentatives of attack. We have the United States and Israel that are all the time spreading information and misinformation about potential attacks. At the same time, we see some diplomatic efforts, but we will talk later about this. Is Iran military ready to fight against the collective West?
Yes, the Iranians have been preparing themselves ever since the United States invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. And ever since Bush and then later Obama began saying that all options are on the table. So Iran has created many underground missile and drone bases specifically to protect itself from the United States. These are different bases from the missile bases that were used to strike Israel and which forced Israel, the Israeli regime, to seek a ceasefire. These bases are full of not just long-range missiles, but short-range missiles, medium-range missiles, and medium and short-range drones, because they are directed at the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman and the Indian Ocean, or the Gulf of Oman. So the Iranians will be devastating U.S. assets, but not just U.S. assets, anything that's linked to the United States. Remember, the countries in the Persian Gulf region, they all have American bases, and these bases are being used to conspire against Iran. So these tiny Arab family dictatorships, they're all complicit. And if war starts, I doubt that these regimes will survive.
Well, and at the same time, we see also many diplomatic efforts. I mean, balancing between some aggressive rhetorics by one side and the other side tentative of talks. It's just a recent news that the talks that were promised and were trying to set up has been cancelled. So do you think these efforts would really bring to calm down the situation, or it's just another trap of the United States to buy time to be ready to strike again, actually following the Israel's agenda to destroy Iran?
Well, U.S. policy in our region is dictated by the Israeli regime. Even in Ukraine, you see how important the influence of the Israeli regime is. If you look at the Epstein documents that have been leaked, and even in Venezuela, we see the role that the Israeli regime plays. So Zionism and the Israeli regime are very important to the United States. They're more important to the United States government than the people of the United States. That's why many consider them to be Israel firsters. But they are also very worried because they know that if Iran enters a war, there will be no more oil from West Asia. There will be no more gas from West Asia or the Caucasus. And that will create an economic collapse. And I don't think Trump's presidency will survive that. And I don't think some of the regimes in the region that are aligned to the United States will survive either. So the damage that will be done to the global economy and to Western economies and to the United States economy will be immense. So they're without a doubt worried. The Israeli regime wants war because they don't care about the globe or the global economy or the interests of the American people. They only care about themselves. And even their people in the United States, in the White House, in the House, and the Senate, they too, their priority is Israel, not the United States. So there's a strong possibility of war. But as I said, the damage that will be done to the United States is immense. And if the priority was not Israel, I'm sure they wouldn't carry out a war. So we'll have to see what happens. But the negotiations are either one of two things. Either it was some sort of trap, like last time, where the Americans were negotiating with Iran, and then they were quietly behind the scenes conspiring against Iran, and they were not really serious. That will not work, because the Iranians are on full alert, and they are prepared for war as we speak. Or the Americans are miscalculating, because we've heard reports that the Americans were surprised that the Iranians are not willing to negotiate their military defense capabilities or their regional alliances. If they're surprised, that shows that they're utterly ignorant, because anyone could have told you that the Iranians are not going to negotiate their missile capabilities. So if the Americans are truly surprised, then that means that the people who are giving advice to the White House and the US government are either not being honest to them when it comes to Iran, or they are clueless when it comes to Iran. So it's unclear why the United States spoke about negotiations and then wrecked the negotiations by making foolish demands. But the Iranians are not going to accept any of the American demands. Iran is not going to accept its regional any limitation to its friendships and alliances. It's not going to accept any limitation to its defensive and offensive capabilities, and it's not going to accept Iran giving up its nuclear program or its right to enrichment. That's not going to happen. Iran is willing to negotiate a nuclear deal where assurances are given that Iran is not producing a nuclear weapon. We've already done that before. But if the United States expects anything more than that, then they're wasting their time.
Thank you so much. And a lot of question I would like to talk about the supreme leader, because Western medias claimed he was fled, was asking asylum in Russia, he was ready to leave Iran, but actually he stayed. He continued to fight beside his people. He continued to lead the country. What does this mean for Iranian people, and which is the message the supreme leader is sharing it around the whole Islamic world as a true religious leader, which is leading this battle against the great Satan, the collective West?
Well, in Iran, no one believes Western propaganda. Ayatollah Khamenei, he was arrested many times before the revolution and tortured by the Shah. But he continued to fight against the regime despite all the hardship that he went through. When Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, he volunteered. And there's footage of him in the war fronts in the beginning months when things were very difficult and Iran wasn't prepared. He was fighting in the war fronts. His children, his older children, were also volunteers in the war. So people know him very well and know that he is not a person who is going to be intimidated. And we've seen over the past few weeks him giving public speeches, and for him, it is business as usual. He is not afraid of the United States, and he is optimistic that Iran will defeat the United States, whether it is a military confrontation or a political confrontation. And I think it's quite clear that ordinary Iranians, for the most part, the vast majority of ordinary Iranians, are confident that Trump will be defeated. No one in Iran wants war, but no one is willing to give up the country's sovereignty, their dignity, and their honor.
Thank you so much, Professor Marandi, for spending your time with us in this interview. We really hope to have you soon back to Think BRICS. Thanks a lot to everybody, and see you to the next interview.
Thank you.